Coral reefs are found in temperate waters, 30 degrees above and below the equator, and contain more life than all on land combined. There are three basic types of reef. Fringing reefs, like Ningaloo, are found around coastlines and islands and come right up to the shore or are separated by a narrow stretch of water. Fringing reefs are the most common type of reef that we see. Barrier reefs also run parallel to the coastline, but they are separated by deeper, wider lagoons. At their shallowest point, they can reach the water's surface, forming a barrier to navigation. Atolls are rings of coral that create protected lagoons and are usually located in the middle of the sea. Atolls usually form when the islands surrounded by fringing reefs sink into the sea, or the sea level rises around them. These islands are often the tops of underwater volcanoes. The fringing reefs continue to grow and eventually they form circles with lagoons inside. The Ningaloo Reef in Western Australia is 1,200 kilometres north of Perth and is the world's longest fringing reef. It stretches over 290 kilometres in length. 250 species of coral, 500 species of fish, and more than 600 species of invertebrate call the reef home. Exmouth is situated on the eastern side of the Northwest Cape, and the Ningaloo Reef runs down the western side of the cape. Coral is composed of tiny fragile animals called coral polyps. A coral polyp is a spineless animal similar to a jellyfish. It has a sac-like body and a mouth surrounded by stinging tentacles. The polyps stretch out their tentacles to capture the plankton that are floating by. The captured plankton is then put into the polyp's mouth and digested in its stomach. Also, living inside the flesh of a polyp is an algae called zooxanthellae, which photosynthesizes using sunlight during the day to produce extra food which is absorbed by the coral. This is why coral should never be covered up from the sunlight. At night, the polyps come out of their skeletons to feed. They wave about in the current, capturing plankton, which is made up of microscopic organisms. Zooplankton is baby animals, while phytoplankton is baby plants. Some will stay planktonic all their lives, while others will settle to the seafloor and become life-size plants and animals. Corals are classified as either hard coral or soft coral. Hard corals are reef-building corals. Their polyps are like little volcanoes that spew up calcium that runs down their sides and cools, forming a hard exoskeleton. This eventually becomes rock and builds up a limestone reef. Plate corals are fast-growing corals, and their flat, round shape allows their maximum surface area to be exposed to the sunlight for photosynthesis. They are very fragile and can easily be damaged by anchors, fins, or cyclones. Staghorn coral is the fastest growing coral with a growth rate of up to 20 centimetres per year. Staghorn coral is also very brittle. However, if a piece is accidentally broken off, it can be pushed into the sand where it will just keep growing. The largest corals are the slowest growing species, adding between 5 and 25 millimetres per year to their length, so humans should never stand on them. These boulder corals are also called porite coral. They would be hundreds of years old and provide shelter to many fish and other corals growing on top of the boulder coral where there is plenty of sunlight. While staghorn corals grow rapidly to gain new territory, slow-growing boulder corals rely on brawn. They hold their ground by being strong and solid enough to withstand the storms that pound more delicate corals to rubble. Brain coral get their common name from the grooves and channels on their surfaces that look like the folds of the human brain. They are also slow-growing corals like the boulder coral and are resistant to damage. Soft corals are soft and bendable and often resemble plants or trees. Instead of hard exoskeletons, they grow wood-like cores for support and fleshy rinds for protection. They are non-reef-building corals and they do not always have zooxanthellae. This is a beautiful orange and yellow cup coral and is often found lining the ceilings of underwater caves. They have large polyps which are usually visible as they live in dark areas. At night, the polyp tentacles expand even more for feeding. Bubble coral has rounded bubble-like polyp sacs that expand during the day. These bubbles are used to collect light, which is important for the coral's growth. The bubbles are very fragile and should never be touched. Approximately 5 days after the first full moon in March, the corals on the Ningaloo Reef spawn.